Hi everyone, my name is Betty May Salvador David. Today I will be discussing institutional correction or the CA 200 subject, Module 4. These are the lessons for today or the lesson 4 that I will be discussing. Before I will be discussing this one or this topic, I will define first the corrections. Correction, the field of correction addresses in this section includes the adult and juvenile agencies responsible for the incarceration, detention, supervision, surveillance of those accused or convicted of committing crimes. These are the examples of the jails or the prison. These are example of a correction. Next is the correction systems encompasses the institutional based correction and the community based correction. Institutional based correction is our nation's prison system and facilities such as jails that temporarily confine those accused or convicted of crime. This is very known as here in the Philippines because institutional based correction is where those criminals or those convicted person of or the offenders put in prison or the jail. That is what they call as institutional based correction. Next is the community based correction. It includes probation, an alternative sentence to jail or prison or detention, as well as paroling authorities which have responsibility for hearing on releasing offenders from incarceration or detention and supervision following release. So, community-based correction is very different to institutional-based correction. Community-based correction, it gives the chance to those offenders to work in the community, out of the jail, out of the prison. They can they can also work, and this is what they call as the probation or the paroling of a offenders. That is community-based correction. Next is, I will be focusing for now to institutional based correction. This is a common use in the correctional study. Prison refers to the penal establishment under the control of the Bureau of Correction or the Bucor and shall include the New Bilibid Prison and other correctional institution. What I had put there below the photo, that is the Bureau of Correction here in the Philippines. That is one of the example of institutional based correction here in our place or in our country. Institutional correction in the Philippines are the New Bilibid Prison, Davao Prison and Penal Farm, Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center, then Correctional Institution for Women, Iwahay Prison and Penal Farm, South Cotabato Rehabilitation and Detention Center, and Manila City Jail. That's the institutional correction here in the Philippines. Nowadays, the institutional corrections are enhanced by various technologies that improve, like the metal detection capability, management of internet access among the inmates, various devices that helps of officers ensure that no illegal action will take place. The examples for these are the X-rays to identify any contraband. Next is the cameras that capture movement in the zones where no movement is allowed. The technologies nowadays is very important and useful for our institutional corrections. They are so important for now so that we can, or the officers or the policemen, detect easily who um they can identify any contraband, and those camera captures movement in the zones or the in the facility. So it is very important. So at the same time, such use of sensitive technology leads to the technology dependence in jails and prison, which can significantly complicate the work of officers. So there's a pros and there's also a cons of having this kind of technology nowadays. So the potential of technologies is such facilities is um, incredited because it allows predicting trouble spots in jails and monitoring any suicide attempts that the inmates might consider or plan. So technologies are important, useful, but there are also um, times or the days that officers are they can complicate the work of the officers because of the technology they are using. So the prediction of a trouble spot can help officers evaluate the overall safety of the facility, yes, and the address the specific of such places, which will help them understand what exactly is the cause of the rising violation. So that's one of the reason and of the technology in the prison or in the correction. So basic concepts of institutional based correction, we have penology, penal management, correction, correctional administration, types of correction, treatment. So that are the basic concepts. So we have here the correctional institution for women um, facility. So this is in one of the example of institutional based correction. So next is community based correction. So community based correction programs have become an essential component of both the juvenile and adult justice system. So this is best known. Community correction programs are probation and parole. So what I had said earlier, the probation and parole. So in 1990, state the federal agencies supervised 2.7 million adults on probation and more than 500,000 on parole. So these are the examples of community-based correction here in the Philippines. They they give chance to those offenders or the criminals to work in that kind of community. So they also help themselves or not to be lonely in that facility that they are just sitting there or in the prison. So this community-based correction program is very helpful for those people who deserved it. So next is to understand the role of community correction programs. It is necessary to differentiate the functions of punishment and corrections. So what is punishment? Punishment is a retributive reaction of an offender's violation of the law. So through punishment, society indicates its disapproval of certain forms of behavior such as violence, theft, and the use of illicit drugs. So that is the meaning of punishment. Next is the corrections. On the other hand, is primarily an effort to influence or correct unlawful behavior. So these seek to reduce future law violations by teaching offenders that certain behaviors are wrong and will result in negative consequences and that other types of behavior may be substituted for illegal acts. So, whereas punishment is simply an event, while correction is a process through which behavioral outcomes are achieved. So, that's the meaning of punishment and the correction and what's the difference between them. So the community-based correction programs can involve elements of punishment as well as correction. So the offenders who remain in their own communities avoid the negative effects of imprisonment, potentiality enhancing their rehabilitation. Supervision in the community enables offenders to repay damages directly to the community rather than simply doing time in a state operated facility. So there are structures and functions in community-based correction. So community correction are administered under a variety of organizational and governmental structures. So in some jurisdiction, either the state or the local government has completed responsibility for community correction. In other jurisdiction, the state and the local government share the responsibility. So increasingly, community correction programs are operated by private companies under contract to a state or local government. Next is um, community-based correction use either front end or the back end of the justice system. They can be used. This means that they can be used for first-time, low-risk offenders who have not been incarcerated and sometimes not even convicted, or for more serious offenders as an alternative to incarceration and a mean to supervise those being released or paroled to the community from correctional institution. So these are the people who are who are who can be in that kind of program, or the community based correction program. Next is a court decision to impose a term of community correction is based largely on the degree to which the offender is thought to present a risk to the public safety. So, a court is also likely to consider whether available programs will be able to address the offender's rehabilitation needs. So, the decision must also take into consideration the seriousness of criminal act and the public's attitude toward the offender. So, if you will be an offender and you will be in that part of community based correction, you the court decides that you will be in that kind of program. They are not just doing um, or the selecting people that are not capable in that kind of program. So, in highly visible or notorious cases, a court may be reluctant to sentence an offender to a community based program, even if the probability of rearrest appears to be low. So, that's what I had said earlier. So, this is the example or the photo that I had taken in the internet about the community based correction program. So, the programs and services of community based correction includes a wide range of programs and services to divert prison-bound offenders, control and supervise offenders who have been given community-based sentences, and supervise offenders at the end of their prison term. So the offenders sentenced to community correction remain in the community. They can live in their own homes and maintain access to employment opportunities. So this is a big chance to those offenders who are part of the community-based correction, because they can leave their own homes. They can maintain access to employment opportunities, like they can work, they can also study. So this program is such a big help to those people who commit crime, and this is also a reason why those people who don't want to commit crime again, because um, the government or the department give them the chance to live peacefully or happily in their community, even if they are um, still in that kind of situation that they are what we call as the criminals or the offenders. So this is a big opportunity to them. So they must meet regularly with a supervision who closely monitors their activities and associations. So If the offender violates the condition, the court can revoke the community based sentence and subject the offender to more severe controls or immediate incarceration. So, if you will be given a chance to be part of this community based correction program, you should regularly must meet regularly with a supervision who closely monitors their activities and associations. So um, you should not violate the rules and regulations in the community-based correction programs. So next though, so the locked detention facilities and jails, even those located in or near residential areas, are not community-based correction. So that is, um, if you are locked in the detention facilities or a jail, that is not community-based based correction or the community-based programs. So that is what we call as the institutional based correction. So informal diversion in community based correction, many courts have been found that directing first time offenders and those who have committed minor crimes from formal court processing can be a cost effective alternative to formal conviction and sentencing. In the adult justice system, pretrial diversion and deferred population popular prosecution programs became a popular during the 1980s for their potential to reduce the administrative and financial burdens of prosecution and trial while effectively intervening in related minor cases. So next we have the suspended sentence. One of the most basic community correction programs is the suspended sentence. An offender who is convicted of a related minor offense and sentenced to a period of supervision or confinement is granted a suspension of the sentence pending the satisfaction of the other condition. So the offenders community service programs are closely supervised as they perform socially useful and paid labor. So these are the road repair and cleanup, gardening and landscaping of public spaces, working in a local food bank, or any number of other specialized tasks that take advantage of the offender's skills and employment background. So that is the community service in community-based correction programs. So we have traditional probation, um, the most widely used community correction program. This involves the suspension of a more restrictive sentence for a defined period of supervision in the community. So, probation contracts include provisions for the revocation and of probation should the offender violate and condition the conditions stipulated in the contract. So, if the offenders violate the conditions stipulated in the contract, there is a um, this is a consequences of that if you are violating the rules in community-based correction. So we have intensive probation. So this is similar to the to traditional probation but involves closer supervision and a greater degree of control over the offender's behavior. So the offenders must agree to more rigorous supervision contracts and meet with their probation worker several times a week or in some cases several times a day. So that is intensive probation. So we have types of community correction based correction. The halfway houses and the work release programs. So first is the halfway houses. This is a usually residential treatment facilities where offenders reside. Typically, offenders travel to and from their residence to work. Moreover, the residents usually has a supervisor and counselor on staff. So generally, halfway houses permit individuals who either are in the process of gradual release from prison or have been given a pre-incarceration chance to stay out of prison. So that is the halfway house. So I have here a photo um got from internet. So this is the Ilocos Sur halfway house, and there are, as you can see, there are the policemen who are or building this kind of halfway houses in different places. So next is the work release programs. So this allows offenders who are in a prison to leave the prison during the day, attend a job, and the community in the evening. The offender must return back to the prison. So furthermore, some work release program allow for study release, which enables offenders to attend college or technical school away from the correctional facilities. So even if you are committing crime, um, the government or the department of the correction um, still giving you a chance to work, to study, so that you will not commit crime again if you will be in that kind of program like the community-based correction program. So this is a big chance to those people who are committing crimes. So these are the examples. They are um, um, being part of the in the construction and building a buildings, and they're also doing some, or they are making stars for the month of December's. So they are given a big chance to be released as soon as possible. So institutional based correction and community based correction are both systems are being implemented on the fragmentary basis by three department of executive branches of the government here in the Philippines. So we have Department of Justice or DOJ, Department of Interior and Local Government or DILG, and the Department of Social Welfare and Development or the DSWD. So first is Department of Justice or the DOJ. This takes care this takes care of national prisoners. So the national prisoners and penal forms which is being supervised and administered by Bureau of Correction or the Bucor. The prisoners whose penalty ranges from 3 years and 1 day to life imprisonment, and those convicted with a death penalty or fine of more than 5,000 pesos regardless of length of sentence. So this is the photo and the logo of the Department of Justice here in our country. So next is the Department of Interior and Local Government or known as the DILG. So this takes of the municipals, city, and district jails. So the provincial jails and sub-provincial jails are operated by the provincial local government units under the supervision and management of by the respective governors in each province, and whose penalty ranges from 6 months and 1 day up to 3 years. So this is the logo of the DILJ and the building that I got in the internet of DILG. So um, so the local jails, namely the municipal jails, city jails, and district jails, under the supervision and administration of Bureau of Jail Management and the Penology or the BJMP. So this is one of the um, district jail I got in the internet. Um, so what is the district jail? This is a consolidation of all inmates in two or four municipal jails whose inmate population is less than 10 monthly, provided it will be located near the Metropolitan Trial Court or Regional Trial Court. Next is we have the DSWD or the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So they take care of the sentenced youth offenders, which are located in the 10 regional youth rehabilitation centers nationwide. So we have 10 rehabilitation centers here in here in the Philippines, for the youth offenders. There are nine for boys, nine facilities for boys, and one for girls. So we all know that DSWD are those a facility or the department that where the youth offenders um, put, or the those who don't have any homes, like um, um, youth children who don't have any homes, they are put in that kind of facility or the DSWD center. So next is, so this is the DSWD examples. They help youth offenders. So next topic is the Republic Act number 9344. This is an act establishing a comprehensive juvenile justice and welfare system, creating the Juvenile Justice and the Welfare Council under the Department of Justice or the DOJ, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. So under the law, children 15 years old and below would be exempted from criminal liability, while youth offenders ages 15 to 18 years old could only be criminally charged if they committed the crime with discernment. So the law also created the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Council under the Department of Justice that would oversee its implementation and advise the president regarding the protection of youth offenders. So even you are a youth offenders, you also have the right, you also have um that kind of the right to be respected in uh, in a facility. Youth offenders are not put in the jails because there are also some of the old adults offenders that can make their mind like. So next is the Republic Act number 10-10575. It is an act, it's strengthening the Bureau of Correction or the Bucor and providing funds therefore. So next is the Good Conduct Time Allowance or the GCTA or the Republic Act 10592. A law allows for a reduction of sentences of persons deprived of liberty depending on how well they abide by rules and regulations inside any penal institution, rehabilitation or detention center, or any local jails. So this is the examples. GT, GCTA. So these crimes were considered punishable by that for being grievous, odious, and hateful offenses, and which, by reason of their inherent or manifest weakness, viciousness, and atrocity, and perversity, are repugnant and outrageous to the common standards and norms, to decency and morality. So next is we have disciplinary controls. the purpose of disciplinary controls, the effort should be made to instill in the minds of all PDL the concept that self-discipline is an essential characteristic of a well-adjusted person. Yes, a self-discipline is very an essential characteristic of every individual. Next is we have the guideline on disciplinary control. On PDL shall be firm to ensure safety and good order in the prison. So breaches of discipline shall be handled objectively and sanctions shall be executed with firmness and justice. Next is we have due process accorded to PDL. So every breach of discipline shall be reported to proper prison authorities. The hearing PDL shall be given die process before he is punished. So the ignorance of prison rules shall not be countenanced and excuse for its non-observance. Yes, that's true. So we have prohibited acts subjects to disciplinary actions here in the Philippines. So these are a lot. So I will not be reading this all this. So one of the example is the possessing articles which pose a threat prison security or the safety and well-being of PDL and staff. So next is the giving gifts, selling or engaging in barter with prison personnel. Next, we have also a gambling and the exchanging his uniform with another PDL or wearing a uniform other than those officially used to him. So there are a lot of prohibited acts subjects to disciplinary action. So we should or you should um, comply or you should follow the rules and regulations so that you will not be violated. So there's a lot of prohibited acts. So procedures for handling disciplinary cases. We have a written complaint shall be filed with the superintendent by the aggrieved inmate by any inmate or prison personnel having personal knowledge of the incident, and the complainant shall sign the complaint and shall describe the violation and names of possible witnesses. Next is the superintendent conducts initial investigation, and if the complaint is found to have basis, shall endorse the case to the Board of Discipline for hearing. Third is we have the Board of Discipline shall decide on the case within 5 working days after the termination of hearings. So next we have the hearing is summary in nature and not bound by technical rules. Next is the inmate charge shall be allowed to present evidence in hearing. And lastly, the decision of the Board of Discipline is subject to review and approval by the superintendent, whose decision is final. So we have disciplinary measures. So we have caution or reprimand, cancellation of privileges. Third is deprivation of good conduct time allowance. Next is challenge of security classification. So we also have disobeying lawful orders of prison authorities, threatening anybody either on verbal or written form, and the possession of any communication devices. So next topic we have Bureau of Jail Management and Penology or BJMP in Republic Act number 6975. So on January 2, 1991, the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology was created through Republic Act 6975 as a line bureau under the Department of Interior and Local Government. So the Jail Bureau is an upgraded version of its forerunner, the Office of Jail Management and Penology of the defunct PC or the INP, last headed by General Arsenio E. Concepcion. As mandated by law, the BJMP shall operate under the reorganized Department of Interior and Local Government. So the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology supervises and controls all district, city, and municipal jails. Next is the Republic Act number 6975 is an act establishing the Philippine National Police under the organized Department of the Interior and Local Government and for other purposes. So the title of this act is This Act Shall Be Known as the Department of the Interior and Local Government Act of 1990. The Section 2 Declaration of Policy, it is hereby declared to be policy of the state to promote peace and order, ensure public safety, and further strengthen local government capability aimed towards the effective delivery of the basic services to the citizenry through the establishment of a highly efficient and competent police force that is national in scope and civilian in character. So, next is we have Republic Act number 9263. Um, is an act providing the professionalization of Bureau of Fire Protection or the BFP and the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology or the BJMP, amending certain provisions of Republic Act number 6975, providing funds thereof and for other purposes. So title of this act is This Act shall be known as the Bureau of Fire Protection and the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology Professionalization Act of 2004. So we have also treatment of special needs or unusual offenders here in the Philippines. So special needs offenders are incarcerated offenders with special needs stemming from their physical or mental age or other disabilities. So we have many types of conditions like offenders with severe psychological needs, mental retarded, significant psychiatric disorders, behavior disorders, multiple handicaps, neurological impairment, and substance abuse, or the offenders with physical handicaps of chronic or thermal illnesses, or the elderly offenders, or last offenders with severe social and or educational deficiencies, learning disabilities, or language barriers, and many more. So every offenders also have their special needs, especially if they are having that kind of severe psychological problems, mental problems, emotional problems. They have they have special needs, and they also have the treatment for them in that kind of facility. The government um, the government really did their best just to treat those offenders who have special needs. So, treatment of special offenders includes women offenders, drug addicts, alcoholics, mentally ill person, and sex deviates, escape prone prisoner, suicide risk prisoners, handicapped, aged and infirmed, youth offenders, and alien inmates. Next is under the rule of BJMP, under Rule 5 of BJMP Manual, it states that unusual offenders should not be held in jails or prison with the common jail or prison population. They should be segregated in other institutions as they temporary detention houses. So if there are people who have special needs or have any kind of problems, like a severe psychological problems, they are segregated to another institution. They are not allowed to be part of the jail or prison in the BJMP. They have different rooms, or they have other institutions that those people put. So next topic is transfer of prisoners. So the Department of Circular number 90 or December 6, 2010 prescribing rules and the implementation of transfer of sentenced prisoners persons agreement. So whereas Section 11, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution declares that the state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect of human rights. So that's the Department of Circular number 90. So transfer of prisoners is maybe a prisoners may be transferred from one prison to another for a number of reasons. So one of the example is their security category has had changed. Next is so that they can serve the final weeks of their sentence in a prison near their home. Next is the prisoner's sentence plan requires them to complete a course which is not available at the prison they are in. So next is they are having a disruptive way. The category A prisoners are routinely moved from time to time to security reasons. Next is for their own safety, they are being bullied. And lastly, if their main visitor had a medical problem, making visits impossible. So that are the examples of um, reasons if there are prisoners are transferred to another jail or the prisons. So so the thus a prisoner have legal right to be transferred to a different prison if they wish. So the answer for that is no, because usually it is up to the governor whether they are transferred, except for category A prisoners or people serving a life sentence, in which case prison headquarters makes the decision. So in other word, the prisoner will never be transferred if they wish. So that's the answer for that question. So I had pictures here got in the internet. I know this is not from the Philippines, but this is from other country, but that is one of the example of transfer of the prisoner. So we have also privileges of detainees and sentenced prisoners. So privileges are used as an incentive for good behavior and sanction bad behavior by inmates. The privileges are used to be alleviated widespread prisoners dissent, which can lead to riots. So privileges can be suspended at any time or any reason as set forth in the prison's rules. So we have examples of privileges. So the access to formal and informal educational programs, communication with loved ones, work programs, purchasing commissary, I'm sorry, day room and recreational activities. So next topic is Regional Rehabilitation Center for Youth, or the RRCY. So this is a residential facility for children in conflict with the law ages 15 years old and below 18. So the center aims to provide the residents an ambience of a home for their reformation. So the vision for this RRCY is to enable the youth offenders restore their social functioning and live a normal life through reintegration, reunification to their family, relatives, and became a productive member of the community and society. Next is we also have the mission to provide social protection to disadvantaged youth ages over 9 years old and below 18 years who needs appropriate care, guidance, supervision, rehabilitation, and development through alternative form of parental care with coordination with the local government units, social workers, and other stakeholders. So the services and interventions of RRCY. We have social service, home life service, educational service, psychological service, health service, livelihood service, recreational and cultural activities, communication, participation, and spiritual enrichment. So next is we have Presidential Decree number 603, or the Child and Youth Welfare Code. So declaration of this policy is the child is one of the most important assets of the nation. So every effort should be exerted to promote his welfare and enhance his opportunities for a useful and happy life. So Article 2, title and scope of this code. This shall be known as the Child and Youth Welfare Code. It shall apply to persons below 21 years of age except those emancipated in accordance with law. Child or minor or the youth are used in this code shall refer to such persons. So the Article 3, rights of the child. All child shall be entitled to the rights herein set forth without distinction as to legitimacy or illegitimacy, sex, social status, religion, political antecedents, and other factors. So first is every child is endowed with the dignity and the worth of a human being from the moment of his conception, as generally accepted in medical parlance, and has therefore the right to be born well. Next is every child has the right to a wholesome family life that will provide him or her with love, care and understanding, guidance and counseling, and moral and material security. So the dependent or abandoned child shall be provided with the nearest substitute for a home. So we have here a photo that I had taken from the internet. The right to a well-rounded development of his personality, and the right to have a wholesome family life. Some examples of child's right. So we have here the um, photo that I had taken in the Presidential Decree number 603, the Child and Youth Welfare Code. So next topic is we have death row, also known as a condemned row, is a place in a prison that houses inmates awaiting execution after being convicted of a capital crime and sentenced to death. So the term is also used figuratively to describe the state of awaiting execution or being on death row, even in places where no special facility or separate unit for condemned inmates exists. Next is um, the capital punishment in the Philippines, or in Filipino, the parusang kamatayan sa Pilipinas, is the death penalty was reinstated under the rule of then Presidential Fidel Ramos, which used the lethal gas inhalation to dispense judgment. Executions continued until the second suspension of the death penalty under President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who suspended it under Republic Act number 946 in 2006. So I have photo here that I have taken in the internet that used before in this kind of the death row. So the parusa for those Filipinos who convicted crime or the severe crime here in the Philippines before. So I have also taken one of the picture in the internet about the a person who committed the crime, or I will just read this one. The Supreme In June 25, 1996, the Supreme Court affirmed the verdict of Branch 104 of the Quezon City Regional Trial Court to impose the death penalty on Leo Echegaray for raping his 10-year-old stepdaughter in 1994. He appealed the motion, which the High Court denied on January 1999. So he was declared the to impose the death penalty in 1996 because of committing crime or raping his stepdaughter. So next is this is our last topic for today, the rule on the writ of amparo. Um, Section 1, or the petition. The petition for writ of amparo is remedy available to any person whose right to life, liberty, and security is violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission of a public official or employee or a private individual or entity. So I got only a front view of the book of the rule of the writ of amparo. So that's the end of my presentation for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you got some. I hope you learned something about this lesson for today. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. God bless.